The guards wouldn't move. 4 of them, standing shoulder to shoulder in front of the delivery truck like they were protecting a vault, not a suburban cul-de-sac. One had his arms crossed, another had his walkie-talkie gripped tight in his hand. The third leaned against a golf cart like he had all day, and the last one, tall, freckled, and way too serious, kept his eyes locked on me like I was a threat. Behind me, my driver, Diego, was fuming. Behind him, 5 more 18-wheelers filled with essential cargo. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what was inside those trucks. And they sure as hell didn't know who was depending on me to get those supplies delivered. On time, no delays, no questions asked. I said move, I repeated, trying to stay calm, even as my voice cracked with the kind of frustration you get when something small turns into something way too big. Sorry, sir, the one with the radio said. This is a private community. Deliveries this large aren't permitted without HOA clearance. That's when I laughed, not the funny kind of laugh. The kind that happens when someone is so far out of line, you don't even know how to respond. Clearance? They wanted clearance for what I was hauling? That's when I stepped forward, locked eyes with him, and said it out loud. You have no idea who you're blocking. But before I could explain, a call came through the walkie-talkie. Static. Then a frantic voice. Something had gone wrong. Something big. And just like that, everything changed. 2 months earlier, I moved into Lakeshore Grove. Quiet streets, fresh-cut lawns, kids biking in the afternoons, ice cream trucks at sunset, and the kind of neighbors who waved with 2 fingers but never really said much else. It was a peaceful place, which is exactly what I needed after the past few years. My name's Raymond Clark. People who know me well just call me Ray. On paper, I run a logistics company. In reality, I run one of the country's largest emergency supply chains: fuel, water, medical equipment, disaster aid. You name it. I don't talk much about what I do, not because I'm secretive. I just don't like attention. When people see a man in jeans and a hoodie, they don't expect him to be managing national contracts. I like it that way. But moving into this HOA-run community was something I didn't fully think through. I figured since I kept to myself, paid my dues, and stayed respectful, things would be smooth. They weren't. My first run-in with the HOA was about my driveway. I had parked one of my smaller trucks there overnight, just for a few hours while I ran inside to grab some paperwork. 10 minutes later, I had a pink slip under my wiper and a notice on my door. Commercial vehicles not permitted to park in private driveways. First warning. I let it slide. Then came the lawn notice. Apparently, my grass was too uneven. I'd been in meetings back-to-back that week and hadn't scheduled my landscaper. My bad, but again, was it worth the threatening letter taped to my garage like I was some criminal? Still, I stayed calm. My mom always said, "Ray, don't let small people pull you into small wars. You were built for bigger things." I held on to that. But the last straw didn't come from letters or petty threats. It came from a woman named Darlene. Now, Darlene is the kind of woman who treats her HOA badge like it's a presidential medal. Sharp bob, clipboard glued to her side, sunglasses that never come off, and a voice that always sounds like she's reporting someone. She once scolded a 6-year-old for riding a scooter too close to the flower beds near the entrance. I wish I was joking. The first time she approached me was during a neighborhood mixer. I was standing near the grill, talking to an older couple about the best barbecue joints in Texas. Darlene walked up, eyes narrowed, and said, "Raymond Clark, right?" "Yeah," I smiled, extending a hand. She didn't take it. "You own those trucks?" My smile faded a little. "Which trucks?" "The ones I've seen going in and out of here. White ones. Big." "I own a logistics company," I said. "Some of them stop by." She tilted her head. "This is a residential community, Mr. Clark, not a distribution hub." And that was that. But from that day on, the tension grew. I tried to smooth things over. I invited some of the board members to tour one of my clean energy warehouses. They never showed up. I sent a letter explaining what my company does for emergency management across the country. I got a return notice saying, "Thank you, but not relevant to HOA concerns." Fine. Then came the day the first real shipment arrived. It was late March, right after a tornado ripped through parts of Arkansas and southern Missouri. FEMA reached out. Hospitals were short on oxygen tanks, dialysis units, clean water drums, things they couldn't wait on. I'd already coordinated with our team. We'd rerouted trucks across 4 states to get everything together. The trucks were set to rendezvous at my house, where we'd do a final loading check before they'd head out overnight. But when they showed up that afternoon, the HOA guards were waiting. They had cones lined up across the entrance, clipboards in hand, radios buzzing. I was on the phone with a supply chain manager when Diego called. "Ray, they're not letting us in." My stomach dropped. I stepped out onto the porch. Sure enough, there was the convoy stuck just outside the gate. I could see the first truck, our clean energy hybrid with the solar wrap. Beyond it, 4 more, each one packed to the top with the gear that could literally keep people alive. I ran through the lawn, past the mailbox, and straight to the gate. That's when I saw them. The guards, the cones, the HOA board members standing off to the side, arms crossed like it was some kind of school play. "What's going on?" I asked, already breathless. One of the guards stepped forward. "Sorry, sir. This delivery violates the community traffic policy." I blinked. "Traffic policy?" He nodded. "No more than 2 commercial vehicles allowed entry without prior approval. These trucks haven't been cleared." I couldn't believe it. Couldn't process it. "These aren't delivery vans dropping off furniture," I said. "They're carrying emergency supplies, medical grade, government contract. People are waiting on this across state lines." But Darlene stepped in, lips pursed. "We don't make exceptions." That's when I felt the heat rise in my chest. Not just anger, disbelief. I could feel Diego's eyes on me from the driver's seat. The other drivers were stepping out now, confused, looking to me. I was responsible for this. I had people depending on me. And this? This was how it all unraveled? But just when I was about to demand they move the cones, a voice came over the guard's walkie-talkie. Static. Then more. The tall guard brought it up to his ear. His face went pale. He turned to me. "Sir, you might want to take a look at this." That's when everything flipped. The guard handed me the walkie-talkie. His hand was shaking. At first I couldn't make out the voice, just noise and bits of shouting, until the words finally broke through. "Confirmed reports, backup generators down, regional hospitals affected. Ray Clark's convoy is our only lifeline right now. I repeat, do not delay his trucks." The voice cut off. Silence followed. I looked up. The guards were staring at me. One of them took a step back. Darlene's expression cracked for the first time, like she'd just been told the Queen herself was waiting at the gate. But I didn't say a word. I handed the radio back. My heart was pounding. I wasn't angry anymore. I was scared. Scared for the people who needed those supplies. Scared that all of this, over cones and clipboards, was costing time no one could afford to waste. Then I took a deep breath and stepped closer to the guard with the keys. "I'm going in." But he didn't move. "Sir, I'm going to need to make a call before—" That's when a woman screamed. Not from the convoy, from inside the neighborhood. We all turned at once. From a side street near the lake, a car came speeding around the bend, horn blaring. A teenage boy was waving his arms out the window. "Somebody help! My sister, she passed out!" The mother jumped out of the passenger side, frantic, barefoot, screaming into her phone. "Her lips are blue. She can't breathe. I don't know what to do." The kid jumped out next. "She has asthma. Her inhaler's empty. We need an ambulance." Everything around me froze. The guards didn't know what to do, but I did. "Open truck 3, I shouted to Diego. "There's a mobile oxygen kit in the red bin, far left." Without waiting for permission, I sprinted toward the truck. Diego flung open the latch and climbed in. I grabbed the med pack, bolted to the family, and found the girl in the back seat, slumped against the door, barely conscious. Her name was Ellie. She was 11 years old. Her chest was rising in shallow little gasps, like she was drinking air through a straw. I opened the kit, switched on the valve, and fitted the mask over her face. Her mother dropped to her knees beside her, sobbing. It took less than 20 seconds, and just like that, Ellie was breathing again. It was the first time I looked back and saw the guards as more than just rule followers. One of them had tears in his eyes. Darlene had turned ghost white, clutching her clipboard like it could somehow reverse what almost just happened. I helped the girl out of the car, guided her to a shaded curb, and gave the mother the rest of the portable unit. Keep it until the ambulance arrives. She looked at me like I was from another planet. You saved her, she whispered. I didn't answer. My hands were shaking too hard. But then the boy, her brother, stepped forward. Wait, are you the guy with the trucks? I nodded. He turned to the guards. You were stopping him? Now the crowd had gathered. Neighbors had come out from their homes, phones in hand, murmuring. They saw what happened. They saw what almost didn't happen. It was quiet for a long moment. Then the tall guard looked at Darlene. Ma'am, I think we need to let him through. But she didn't speak. So he turned back to me, pulled the cone aside, and said softly, Go ahead, Mr. Clark. The trucks began to roll in, one after the other. We parked them along the side of my property, coordinated the route update over the radio, and began rechecking the cargo for night dispatch. But something in me had shifted. That girl, Ellie, she could have died. Over a policy, over clearance. I stayed up most of that night, watching the trucks disappear one by one through the gate, knowing every mile they traveled meant someone was getting help. It should have ended there. It didn't. Because the very next morning I woke up to a letter on my doorstep. Not a thank you. Not an apology. A fine. Violation of HOA Community Delivery Ordinance. Incident under review. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. But just as I started to prepare my response, something even worse happened. A letter arrived, but not just for me, for every resident in Lakeshore Grove. And what it said would change everything. The envelope was thick and cream-colored, sealed with a gold-embossed Lakeshore Grove emblem. It was hand-delivered. Every single resident got one. Some received theirs tucked under doormats. Others found it wedged into mailboxes. But by 9 a.m., everyone on my street was standing outside, letter in hand, confusion on their faces. I hadn't even finished my coffee when my neighbor, Mr. Halpern, knocked on my door holding his unopened envelope. Ray, he said, his voice tight. You seen this? I nodded. Mine was on the kitchen counter. I hadn't opened it yet. I was still too angry about the fine letter from the day before. He peeled his open right there on my porch, eyes scanning fast. Then he looked up, stunned. They're calling for a vote. Emergency HOA meeting, tonight. I opened mine. There it was. Bold print across the top. Urgent community ballot. HOA policy enforcement vote. Below that, a paragraph so loaded it nearly knocked the wind out of me. All residents are hereby requested to cast their vote regarding the enforcement of community regulations concerning unauthorized delivery activity, commercial vehicle presence, and HOA override authority in times of perceived emergency. In short, they were voting on whether people like me could be banned from using their own driveway or street access during what the HOA defined as non-standard hours. After everything that happened, after saving a child's life, after supplying disaster relief, they were trying to clamp down even harder. But what really got me was the line at the bottom, proposed by Darlene Wilkes, chairwoman. She hadn't backed off. She'd doubled down. That night, the HOA gathered in the community clubhouse. It was packed. Folding chairs wall to wall, neighbors standing along the back, some still in work uniforms, others in slippers and robes. Darlene sat front and center with her clipboard and her signature cold stare. Her lips barely moved when she spoke. "We understand there was a situation last week," she said. "But we must remember, rules are rules. Communities thrive on order. Once we begin making exceptions, where do we draw the line?" Someone from the back called out, "How about when someone saves a kid's life?" Another voice, "Or helps people after a tornado." But Darlene held up her hand. "That's not the point." "No, that is exactly the point," I said, stepping forward from the crowd. All eyes turned to me. I didn't move here to start trouble. I moved here because I thought this was a place where people looked out for each other, where kids could ride bikes safely and neighbors waved good morning. A murmur spread through the crowd. "I've kept quiet while you fined me for 10-minute parking violations, for excess grass height, for unapproved bin storage. I stayed respectful. I played by the book. But last week, that wasn't about rules, that was about life." People started nodding. I supply emergency infrastructure. When cities fall apart, when floods wipe out towns, when hospitals run out of oxygen, I'm one of the people who make sure help still shows up. Quietly, quickly, without asking for thanks. The room was quiet now. Still. And I didn't expect thanks. But I never expected a punishment either. Even some of the board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then I paused. "And I know this community's better than that. I know you're better than that," I said, looking around at the faces, some ashamed, some supportive, all listening. "But if the vote passes, and I can't do my job because of red tape and parking codes, then I'll do what I have to do. I'll move. And I'll let every agency that relies on me know why." A hush fell over the room. Then Mr. Halpern stood up. "So what if we all vote no?" he said. "Then what happens?" Darlene's face twitched. "It means the HOA rules stay as they are, without change." He nodded. "Then I vote no." A woman near the back raised her hand. "Same here." One by one, voices followed. "No, no, no." It was a wave, a tide shifting right in front of her. Darlene's hand trembled as she clutched her clipboard. That's when a board member whispered something into her ear. Her face turned pale. She stood, meeting adjourned. But as I left the building, a young man in a Lakeshore Grove staff polo ran up to me, panicked. "Mr. Clark, one of your trucks didn't reach its destination last night." I froze. "What do you mean?" He handed me a crumpled sheet. GPS data. A route map. It veered off course somewhere after it left here. Stopped transmitting 2 hours ago. I took the paper and stared at it. This wasn't about HOA anymore. Something had gone seriously wrong. The map in my hand was marked with a red dot, just off Highway 41, past a rest stop, near the edge of a National Park Reserve. That's where the signal had disappeared. One of my trucks, loaded with medical-grade IV fluids and sanitation gear for a field clinic in Tennessee, had simply vanished. The staffer, a young guy named Caleb, was breathless as he spoke. "We checked the trackers 3 times. It's dead silent. Last ping was 3:07 a.m. I didn't waste time. I sprinted to my SUV, dialed Diego as I drove. "Truck 4 went dark. Did they check in?" "Last I heard, Alvin was on schedule. Left around midnight. Nothing unusual." "Then something's wrong." The tires screeched as I turned out of Lakeshore Grove, headlights cutting through the early morning fog. I drove like every second counted, because it did. These weren't just supplies. These were essentials for people recovering from a multi-county disaster zone. Every delay was another patient waiting in agony, another child lying on a cot in a temporary shelter. And Alvin, he was more than just a driver. He was a father of 2, a veteran. He didn't just disappear. The route took me past winding back roads and deep pine woods. About 45 minutes in, I found the turnoff near the rest stop. I slowed. The trees closed in around the road. The GPS showed no movement, just the same blinking red dot. Then I saw it. The truck. Parked sideways across a gravel path, its hazard lights off, cab door flung open. I slammed the brakes, jumped out, and ran. "Alvin!" I shouted. No answer. I climbed into the cab. Empty. No keys. No wallet on the seat. Just an open thermos of coffee, still half full. I checked the rear doors. Locked. But a crowbar mark was on the side. That's when I heard something. A crackle. Voices. In the woods. I backed up, heart thudding. My instincts told me not to call the police yet, not without understanding what this was. I crouched low behind a tree and listened. "I told you it wasn't random," one voice said. "They knew what this was. That's why we wait. He'll come. You'll see." I didn't breathe. Whoever they were, they knew me. I stepped back slowly, but a twig snapped under my boot. Silence. Then, "Did you hear that?" I took off running. Branches whipped at my arms as I bolted through the trees, ducking behind a ridge until I made it back to the road. I jumped into my SUV and floored it, heart racing. This wasn't a robbery. This was targeted, and they wanted me. Back at Lakeshore Grove, it felt like a storm was brewing. The community had heard bits and pieces. Someone said a truck was hijacked. Others claimed the vote had triggered something bigger. Rumors flew like leaves in the wind. I didn't say much. I couldn't. Not until I knew more. Instead, I spent the day on the phone with every contact I had. Federal, state, even one guy I knew from a Homeland Security job back in '08. All I got were dead ends. But just before dusk, a white envelope showed up on my doorstep. No stamp, no name. Inside, a single printed photo. It was Alvin, tied to a chair in some warehouse, and taped across the bottom in bold black letters. "Call off the deliveries, or this gets worse." My knees gave out right there on the porch, not because I was afraid for myself, but because I knew whoever this was, whatever they wanted, it had nothing to do with HOA, and everything to do with shutting me down. I gripped the photo tight and made a decision. They picked the wrong person to threaten. But I needed help, and it would have to come from the one place I never thought I'd return to. The place I left behind to protect everyone else. I made the call, and the voice on the other end answered, "It's been a while, Ray. You sure you want back in?" I looked at the photo again. I'm sure. Chapter 5. The voice on the other end of the line belonged to Agent Maura Bishop, a former federal operations lead who now ran a quiet private intel network for high-risk logistics. The kind of person you call when you're not sure if you're dealing with common thieves or something far more organized. "You still have clearance to run trackers through old federal grid lines?" I asked her, pacing my living room. "I do," she said, her voice crisp as ever. "But if you're calling me, Ray, that means someone messed with the wrong truck." "They didn't just take the truck," I said quietly. "They took Alvin." A long pause followed. "I'll ping the truck's hardware. The thieves might have killed the GPS, but they can't strip the low-level pings embedded in the axle unless they knew it was there. That's what I'm counting on. Give me 2 hours." When Maura hung up, I sat down and stared at the photo again. Alvin's eyes, the tight rope around his wrists, the sweat on his forehead. Whoever took him wanted to scare me, and they were succeeding. But they also made a mistake. They thought I was just the man behind the clipboard. They didn't know about the years I'd spent running supply lines through unstable regions, partnering with governments and NGOs, dodging hijackers and militias. This wasn't my first rodeo. I pulled out the emergency tablet from my safe and launched our dormant protocol, Wolfline. It was a last resort network meant for when regular routes were compromised. I keyed in the other drivers, alerted the backup crews, put all outbound trucks on hold until I had Alvin back. But someone had noticed the trucks were grounded, and it wasn't just my staff. That night, Darlene showed up at my house. She didn't knock. She just stood there, arms folded, eyes flicking from my front door to the idling emergency lights of the truck still parked along the side of the street. "Mind if I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then opened the door. She stepped inside, glanced around, and wrinkled her nose like compassion didn't mix well with pine-scented air freshener. "I heard something happened," she said. "Something serious." I raised an eyebrow. "You heard. The neighborhood grapevine is faster than the HOA bulletin." I folded my arms. "What do you want, Darlene?" She paused, lips pressed thin. "I came to say I was wrong." I blinked. That was not what I expected. "I've been trying to keep Lakeshore pure," she said. "But I forgot that purity isn't about rules. It's about people. And the people here? They trust you. Even the ones who didn't vote. They're watching what happens next." I didn't say anything. "I know I can't undo what's been done. But I can help." "How?" She took a breath, like the words hurt to say. "One of my nephews. He works for a company that contracts private warehousing across this region. He mentioned strange movements last week, unusual shipments, locked docks, no manifests. I didn't think anything of it. But if you give me the coordinates from that tracker, I'll have him look." I nodded slowly. "You get me one real lead, Darlene, and I'll make this right." She nodded, then left. At 11:27 p.m., Maura called back. "We found the ping," she said. "Isolated, southern ridge, about 45 minutes east of the original route. I'll send you the coordinates." I jumped to my feet. "I'm going." "No, Ray. Listen. They've moved the truck, but Alvin's signal is still bouncing from nearby. He's not with the truck. That means they split him up for leverage." I froze. "So he's still alive?" "As of 20 minutes ago, but you don't have long." I grabbed my keys. Maura's voice rose. "You'll need backup. I'm sending a former unit I trust. They'll meet you at the gas station on Route 6. Don't go in alone." But before I could respond, the lights outside my house cut out. My phone lost signal. And then a brick shattered my living room window. I dropped to the floor. Smoke hissed through the broken pane. Not just any smoke. Tear gas. They weren't waiting for me to come find them. They were coming for me. Chapter 6. I hit the floor fast, coughing as the gas spread through the room like poison fog. My eyes burned, my throat clamped shut. Somewhere behind me, my phone vibrated on the floor, useless. The signal was already cut. Whoever they were, they knew the house. They knew me. And they weren't playing games anymore. Through the haze, I crawled toward the emergency cabinet behind the bookshelf, fumbled with the latch, got it open. Inside, one gas mask, a flare gun, a set of encrypted emergency radios. I strapped on the mask just as the front door burst open. 3 shadows entered, dressed in black from head to toe, no insignias, military-grade boots, not random punks, professionals. One of them spotted me crawling and shouted. The other 2 fanned out. They had weapons, but so did I. I grabbed the flare gun and fired at the ceiling. The blinding blast lit up the room like a firework, disorienting all 3 intruders for a second, just long enough for me to bolt through the side door and dive off the porch into the bushes. I hit the ground hard, rolling down the slope toward the back lot. My SUV was blocked in. But Darlene's golf cart, still parked near the mailbox. I sprinted for it, hot-wired it in seconds, and took off down the street like a lunatic. Residents peeked out from windows and porches, startled by the commotion. Some caught glimpses of men in black running across my lawn, one of them holding what looked like a rifle. People screamed, dogs barked, lights flipped on all across Lakeshore Grove. The quiet little neighborhood had just exploded into a war zone. I made it to the gas station on Route 6 in under 15 minutes, still wearing the mask, shirt torn, adrenaline in full overdrive. I skidded into the lot, half expecting no one to be there. But they were. Maura's backup team, 4 of them in a black SUV, already geared up. former special ops, eyes like ice. The leader, a woman named Brooks, stepped out with a tablet. They tried to intercept us, she said. Failed. You got a location? I asked. Brooks handed me the screen. Warehouse, 2 towns over. Abandoned textile plant. Heat signatures inside. One of them matched Alvin's biometric ID. We go now, I said. Brooks nodded once. We follow your lead. We hit the warehouse just after 2 a.m. No guards outside. Too quiet. Brooks motioned left. I flanked right. One of her guys looped around back. Maura was patched in remotely, guiding us through infrared overlays via earpiece. 3 bodies inside. 1 stationary, likely Alvin. 2 moving, armed. We breached fast. Smoke. Shouting. A flashbang. Then the chaos cracked wide open. Gunfire tore through the silence. I ducked behind a steel beam, heart pounding like a drum. Brooks's team moved like liquid, clearing the right flank, securing corners, no hesitation. I spotted Alvin tied to a chair in the back, duct tape over his mouth, eyes wide with panic. I rushed to him, tore the tape off. You came, he whispered, hoarse. Would have brought coffee if I had time. He gave a broken laugh. We moved fast, freed his hands, got him to his feet. But just as we turned for the exit, the ringleader appeared, tall, built like a freight train, wearing a stolen federal badge on his vest. You don't know who you're messing with, he snarled. I stepped between him and Alvin. No, I said, you don't. Then Brooks fired 1 clean shot. The man dropped like a sack of bricks. We dragged Alvin out just as sirens began to wail in the distance, local cops, finally catching up to a game that had outgrown the HOA, the neighborhood, and even the state. It was over by sunrise. Alvin was safe. The supplies rerouted. The hijackers arrested, part of a rogue group intercepting emergency shipments for resale on the black market. They'd been watching my company for months, waiting for the perfect time to strike. They picked the wrong time, and the wrong man. 3 days later, I stood at the Lakeshore Grove Community Center, same place where the HOA vote had gone down. This time, the podium was mine. I told them everything, without drama, without bragging. Just the truth, about the mission, the hijacking, the rescue, and the quiet war I'd been fighting not just to protect my trucks, but the people who depended on them. When I finished, I looked out at a room full of stunned faces, and then applause, long, loud, real. Even Darlene stood, no clipboard this time, just a small nod. I was wrong, she said again. I see that now. I smiled. I never needed you to like me, Darlene. I just needed you to trust me. And she did. From that day forward, no more fines, no more guards at the gate. And the HOA? Let's just say they rewrote the rule book. Because when your neighbor turns out to be the reason hospitals don't go dark, the least you can do is let his trucks through. Some people run companies. Some people run block parties. Me? I keep the lights on when the world starts flickering. And I never stop the delivery, not even when the guards are waiting.